lost your paper home. I can't remember taking them in the house, they're in the back seat of my truck. Thank you, I really appreciate that. It looked pretty, it looked pretty round.
Too early, so
You know,
folks have a chance
they
to
were
find
so long on the side, to get them long in the front, they were short on the ends, and then we put that round one on there, and it looked perfect.
That's all right.
She's working part-time, but I don't think she's gonna be here this weekend. She's got those two grandsons, she's trying to get through school. Absolutely, my children.
Yeah.
She's in around and everything. And you know, find out in the morning, what she has.
My daughter made it.
And that's usually what you say.
She made this big, just to cover my big head.
So it's 2:29, do you wanna get Bob on the phone?
Yeah, is there a number to dial out on?
You have to dial 9, just pick up the phone and dial 9.
See, my,
Mr. Reed?
Hey, can you
All right, have you on speakerphone?
Okay, good.
It is now 2:30 on August 18th, 2020. I'll call the meeting to order at this time and request Ms. Davis if she would call the roll, please.
Rick Brewer. Bob Edens.
Here.
Keith Gibson.
here.
Valerie Goins. Here. Ray Jesse.
Here.
John Hance.
Here.
Charlie Thacker.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have 6 members present, constituting a quorum.
Entertain a motion for approval of consent agenda for today's meeting. I have a motion by Commissioner Jesse and a second by Commissioner Gibson.
This is not on the agenda.
Eric will address that
Okay.
on the devices.
Okay,
I didn't talk about it, sorry.
that's all right. We'll discuss
If we,
We'll
let's,
just suspend them.
let's, does anybody have, an issue with entering one more item in? If not, can we get another motion to approve consent agenda with including the discussion about the devices? We'll have a motion by Commissioner Thacker,
Second.
a second by Commissioner Gibson. Any opposed? The motion passes. There are no minutes for approval, so we'll run right into item number 5, discussing the potential impact of the following resolutions that will be discussed Monday night. We will start out with Resolution 2020-0802, which is the resolution to fund Hawkins County Fire Departments in the 2020-2021 budget at the same level of funding as previously funded in the 2019-20 fiscal year budget. So there is not verbiage within the resolution of where those funds are gonna come from, is there?
I haven't seen this
So,
section.
what is the fund balance of the public safety allocated for fire departments?
It's at roughly $25,000, which is not sufficient to cover this resolution on its own.
So there'll need to be approximately $23,000 pulled from the general fund to satisfy the proposed resolution.
General fund, undesignated fund balance, correct?
How many fire departments do we have? 14?
12 that were funded.
12, probably.
That's probably right, 12.
We've got 4 municipalities and 8 county departments.
So at 23,000, that's gonna add to the current deficit by about slightly over 3%.
That'll be, $23,000 more dollars.
That's a little over 3%. Adding the 23,000, so that's gonna put you 732.
Yeah.
Is there any questions or additional concerns about that resolution? We won't vote to recommend to pass this on, just wanted to bring it up so everybody was aware of what the actual dollar amounts were. Eric, do you have anything to add?
Another thing to be aware of is if this resolution was to pass, it is 2020-0802. It then has a bearing on the documents that we're attempting to pass when we pass the official appropriations resolution as well as the contributions page. So this here is going to affect those other documents you're going to see come up later in the evening. We'll either need to pass those as amended or come back in September and do a budget amendment to officially amend the budget to include these funds if it was to pass.
Okay, so let me double check, because I was looking at the wrong thing, because I looked at a 12 instead of a 2, I was confused. Okay, you're saying $48,000 is what we have to take, which I understood 25,000 is from the fund balance for emergency, whatever. Right, so it'd be a total of 48, including the 25 and the 23.
With the 25 and 23, yes.
Okay.
48,000 total.
Eric, would we be better off to address this after we, in a future meeting?
I sure would appreciate it, yes. It would make things a little simpler for not only this office, but as well as Ms. Davis's office. She's compiling the official records here that we have to send out to the Division of Local or Finance there in Nashville. I mean, there's still maybe something else that comes up the day of that we have to amend on the fly, but the fewer adjustments we can make to this document would be beneficial to me.
Yeah.
Not necessarily saying yea or nay, but saying we'll look at it in September and amend the budget once we have a budget to amend. But right now, we don't have a budget on file. We're operating a continuing budget, and we're trying to amend a budget that we haven't even passed yet.
So it'd be best to table it if the person knows it.
In my humble opinion.
What do you, should we go ahead and make a recommendation out of the budget committee? Would you, is that something you prefer to do?
I think so.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion to that effect?
That will table it until the September meeting after we actually have a budget.
Okay.
Yeah, or somebody talk to Mr. Allen and have him just pull the resolution.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Goins to recommend pulling or tabling this resolution until we have an approved budget.
And trying to change the budget before it's approved.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Gibson. Any additional discussion? If not, any opposition? Motion passes to recommend that resolution be tabled or pulled for additional consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot to, add Mark DeWitt to my roll call. I like the record to reflect that Mark DeWitt is present today. Sorry about that. Sorry,
I'm just
Mark.
hanging out over here.
Moving on to resolution 2020-0804 to provide funding for purchase of 2 remounted ambulances, sponsored by Commissioner Bailey. And this resolution requests that $275,000 be pulled from the governor's grant that we are at some point supposed to receive, of which we have not as of yet, as far as I'm aware.
As far as I'm aware as well.
Would it not be better to wait until after we have the money before?
Hey, John,
Sir, yes, sir.
shouldn't that be 300,000 instead of 275, because I think the last time we had a report was 150,000 to rebuild those things.
Yeah, there are actual several questions within this. There's even a quote attached. And then you also have an additional $60,000 that we allocated from contributions. So that would bring total contribution to EMS, the way it's written in this resolution, up to $335,000. Correct, Eric?
The way it's written, I don't know that it would flow through our general fund. I think it would flow through our 171, the way it's written through the governor's support grant, or at least that's the way we've isolated the support grant up to this point, was to fund those through 171. Still doesn't come to the same cumulative total for money we're gonna give to that organization, but it flows through a different budget.
Okay.
Has the EMS expressed, would they rather have a new ambulance or having 2 remounted ones? I know we got,
Remount's what they're talking about,
but have they said they'd rather have the remounts? Or would they rather have, I know later on there's another one you're talking about, a new ambulance. But
Yeah,
which
I
one would they
know.
rather have?
yeah, I've not heard them say either way. But I know they're in dire need, EMS is, but I always have a problem with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we gave them what, $90,000? 6 contributions,
60.
60?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then their collection agency is in North Carolina, and they pay them $90,000 a year. Why couldn't that be done in-house? Pay somebody, say $30,000 or whatever, and keep the rest of it in-house, rather than get some outside firm in another state to do the collection for you.
And I'll say that's a question and an issue that had been discussed several years ago, but I don't feel comfortable in speaking about that without them being here.
No, I agree, but I mean, that's a question I have.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. No doubt that. To be honest, there's a lot of questions, and that's why I was actually hopeful that we would have been able to have a workshop for all commissioners to gather together and try and make some suggestions on what would be most beneficial cumulatively for the entire county. And we've got a lot of issues to be addressed, not only now, but so many unknowns in the works
And I think there's, somewhere maybe around 38%, they don't even collect. Somewhere in that range.
Yes.
How much is this grant total?
1,176,000, is that correct, Terry?
That's correct, but in its current state, with the work we've done to this point, we're looking at $676,739 remaining. Current, subject to change, but that's the current state we're at.
What was that number again?
676,739.
That's what they have right now.
We don't have anything right now, but that's what we have from that grant coming to us that we haven't yet obligated anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Cause we've got 500,000 for the water,
Yes,
and then what was the other, I forgot.
that's the only that I'm currently aware of.
Oh, okay, although I guess that does,
You know, I personally would rather know which one they'd rather have. This didn't go through public safety, should it go through public safety before?
That's what I thought, and, it should have went through public safety before this was turned in, I thought.
he's not on public safety committee either, right?
Do what?
Is he on public safety committee?
It's not went through the public safety.
Oh, okay, cause I had no idea, I didn't know anything about it until it showed up in this packet, because Jeff had sent me an email asking me that question, and I had no idea, I was kinda in the dark.
I wasn't aware of it either till it came out online.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I know they need, you know, a lot, but the thing about it is, they're a private entity. And, you know, there's a way of helping, you know, we could, but I don't think I would ever be for, and I'm just speaking for myself, but I don't think I'd ever be for going in partnerships with them. But I don't think the county can afford it, I don't think taxpayers could. We could help them in some way like this, be fine, but I don't think we could afford go partnerships with them. I know we've had those studies, had that group of people that did, you know, Dr. Jones and all of them, but I don't think the county can afford it.
I'd rather see, if we're gonna do anything, I'd rather see us buy a new ambulance. Because it's easier for them to come up with, is it $90,000 to redo a remount or whatever it is that they
Well,
come
I
up
think
with.
they're satisfied with the remount, you know, get the cab chassis, just change everything over, I believe.
But would they prefer a new vehicle and then let them work, I don't know if they can get grants or whatever to do a remount?
Yeah.
It'd be easier to come up with the lesser amount of money is what I'm thinking, than it is to buy a whole new ambulance that'll last, I don't know how many years they stay in service, but, I would think a new one would be, they'd be better suited with that. And that's the reason I ask if anybody even asked them about it. Which, again, you know, they didn't go through public safety, have they been asked that question? What would they rather have?
I don't, to my knowledge, they haven't.
How
And
much
several of
does
us
it
is on public safety.
how much does a new one cost?
Well, I'm not saying, John, check that quote, see if that's not a new one. I think the quantity on that.
Speak up a little bit, I can't hear you that much.
Check the quote, see if the quantity's not the one on it.
It is.
$202,421.
That vendor is typically a new unit. I can't speak for this quote exactly, but that vendor is typically a new unit.
It says at 2020.
Okay, so one and one.
Okay, alright.
I know there's gonna be some,
Would you like me to call him and see if this is a new unit or a remount?
Go ahead and just call to confirm. I think we know what it is, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
I know there's gonna be, 3 or 4 legality questions asked on this. Chances are they will be.
I'm sure there will be, and I actually posed a few to our counsel, Mr. Phillips, about it as well, so.
I mean, that's like leasing it to them for $1, who's responsible? You know, things like that.
Right, yeah, there would have to be a contractual agreement. It would be a typical lease, just like the equipment and the vehicles that you lease through your business.
Who would be required to carry the insurance if it's a lease?
They would be required to carry the insurance.
We would have to be named on the policy as an additional insured.
And it would remain a county asset, until the lease agreement expired.
And if it did a remount, who would be responsible for doing that?
That would be, they would actually own the base asset, so it would be improving that asset, so it would be theirs as far as I know.
This as quoted is to their spec for one new unit, from the western quote inside the packet.
Do we have any recommendation on this resolution?
Sort of thing like what Valerie did on the last one, we need a little more information. I would personally like to see this tabled until we find out a little bit more through public safety and through what they want the rescue people, the EMS would rather do.
You can table it and refer it back to the committee.
Well, I'll table, refer it back to the committee then. That's my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Gibson to recommend tabling resolution 2020-0804 back to Public Safety Committee
Public safety.
for consideration.
I'll second.
Have a second by Commissioner Goins. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. Moving on to resolution 2020-0805, rescind resolution 2020-0604 to equitably allocate funding to impact the safety and security of all Hawkins County citizens. Floor is open for discussion.
I understand what this resolution is saying, but I also feel that it's kind of mean to take away the money that we've said that these folks can have to have their water be fixed, and their water just keeps getting cut off. And we've seen what problems that have been caused and all that, and the term Indian giver comes to mind for me.
I know the engineering group's already been there. The road superintendent's already been there. And I do know that, First Utility's already got a thought for that project.
So, I mean, they're already in process, I don't think we should take their money away from them.
And there, again, I'll have to argue with the fact that there was a commitment to give away funds that we didn't even have. And you're actually gonna establish a precedence by doing this, that anytime something like a faulty septic system causes contamination of someone else's well, or even the well at that property, what is going to say the county should or should not step in to rectify that particular issue? And what research that I've done in 2008 in Mooresburg community, this same thing, they're saying faulty septic system occurred in that area. And there was a hepatitis A outbreak, and there were 1,500 people that were vaccinated due to that outbreak that occurred from that faulty septic, from that particular septic system. So, and I know growing up, there were issues like that occurred in District 7. So those people are not given the opportunity to receive funding to fix the problem that they had. And this is definitely gonna be something that's gonna happen in the future. So where do we draw the line to say that's not county government's issue to deal with? I'm concerned it's gonna open up a lot more.
I thought it was my understanding that the landfill issue, the business caused this problem.
Not from what the documentation from the state that was handed out in June. The primary culprit was faulty septic system. And the state,
That comes from farmland.
Charlie, you mentioned about the pump being ordered. I talked to Jeremy Jones last week, and he said the pump had not been ordered. He said he'd been talking with them, but he had not ordered.
Well, I was told that, they had ordered.
I understand Jeremy told me that had not been. And I want to say something to Melissa back here in the back. You know, we talk about running water. There was an issue at Clinch, aren't they? Going on, I mean, they even, at a school board meeting, they even talked about trying to have it hook on to, Hancock County. I don't know what utility district it is over there, but, I don't remember the exact issue about water, but they have a little bit of an issue, don't they?
I think it's an issue with the well or maybe the backup to that when the power and things go out, or they have to bring it in for it.
It's not contaminated water, it just,
No, I don't,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of.
okay, but it could happen over there, so then what we do?
there are there 16 utility districts, water utilities, so there's 16 water utility districts that operate within Hawkins County. So when something like this occurs in another community involving another utility district, what are we supposed to do?
Why didn't nobody say that when we were in the meeting?
Well, there you go. There was a lot of things that weren't discussed. Also, the fact that that funding is just for phase one. And phase one was 800,000?
I think they're 25.
825,000
I
total
believe so.
cost just of phase one. So we're committing to $500,000, which that'd be what, 63% of the total project?
Confirm that for you, it sounds very close.
I say entire project, I mean phase one of the project.
Rounding 61%.
So 61% of phase one of that project will be funded from the county. So,
Jeremy told me, again, if the entire project will be somewhat over between $2 and $2.25 million to do all that they're wanting to do.
Well, that is, gravelly.
Tipton Lane.
Road, Mountain Line Road, Tipton Lane, all of them.
Oh, right.
That was around that. And, the way the crow flies, I don't live too far from, like Tipton Lane, it's on up Carter Valley a little ways, but I don't live that far from it.
I see the chairman, is he up at the district, is he really the district up there?
I can't hear.
Is he up at the utility district?
Yes, he's over First Utility District.
Okay.
My hearing aid's not working. I keep reading lips.
Yeah, that's the problem, a lot of people with the money.
How much was it, did we say we were up to 723?
Write that down somewhere.
732.
732.
732?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I don't remember us discussing where's that money gonna come? We taking it out of the undesignated fund balance or will we?
are you talking the deficit will be pulled from fund balance, yes, sir. Yep, all
Okay.
it is. what you said, Commissioner Goins, I completely agree that there's a lot of information that we didn't have privy to at the time that the resolution was presented in June.
John, I have a question. If we set this precedence to doing this now, are we gonna be obligated for the rest of this phase 2, 3, or whatever the next of it is? Even though this is grant money?
You know, I wouldn't think so, but it doesn't spell out that there's, in the June resolution, that there's even multiple phases. It just refers to the project itself. Do you have anything to add here?
If my memory serves me, I believe the resolution was worded such that it capped the 500,000. So I would think that in its current state, once we had reached that threshold, we would be done. But I would feel better if Phillips would back that.
But that's just capping the grant money.
Correct. Correct, it is.
Also wouldn't stop them from asking for more for phase 2.
Correct.
And I think all of us are supporting all of our commissioners and what they want to do in their district. But when something like this occurs in the rest of our districts, and we come and say there's a need there, what's gonna happen?
Set precedent.
I was thinking that this, along with any extra money that might come forward, would be used for that project as far as it would go, and then you'd apply for grants thereafter. That's what
On the grants,
expression I got anyway.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Mr. Charles.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, on the grants, are these matching grants, or are most of these, you have to do a match with them, or are they in the total bill on something like that?
CDBG grants?
15% match,
15%.
because we're a 3-star community.
You know, of course, I'd be in favor of something like that if there is a matching grant, trying to help them do something like that. If
The
they have-
problem in most cases with a grant is, especially with water, is the fact that there's never, where the water is needed, there's never enough people, numbers to come up to actually get the grants. That'd be the case here. If it be Mooresburg, or, I mean, it'd have to be close in. And most people close in, like Rogersville, Churchill, whatever, they've got city water. But when you get out in the suburb, out in rural areas, such as this is, then there's just not enough people. It used to be 12 people per mile to apply for a grant. But I believe it's about, somebody else may know, I think about 30 or 40 now. They've changed the numbers over the last 15 years or so.
And of course, I understand why TDEC does that, where they set a parameter of 10 or 12 residences per that mile, because there's no way that you could have a viable system to generate enough revenue to pay for installing that line. Even doing the depreciation out 20, 30 years, you're still gonna lose money, which would put the utility district in a position of being distressed. So there's a reason for that. And also, in reading through the documentation provided from the state, it also says that the homes that had filtration systems in the home did not result in any contaminants. So, lots of.
Well, I know in 2004, 2005, it's 12 houses per mile. Because I got a petition, and on 2 mile, I had 43 residents. And I applied through Johnson City, Vernon Kirk at the time. And didn't get no water. So I put 4,000 feet of water line in myself. Some people, 4,000 feet. And I did it through Virginia. Off there, I had them to put a master meter in.
But I really like what Commissioner Gibson had alluded to, which seemed like it was set aside funding to be used for matching grants. That would certainly maximize the return on investment from the funds that are being donated to Hawkins County.
Wouldn't that make it fair to everybody?
If you're asking my personal opinion, I would have to agree and say that would be a more fair and equitable way to do things, which that was kind of what we intended to do with the public safety monies that were set aside, that we were trying to build fund balance in. That money would be used to supplement grants that the fire departments applied for, but that fund keeps getting rated each year, 2 years in a row, that it's completely depleted. So there's no way to build a fund balance when you break it down to zero every year.
How many vehicles are in, those automated?
Believe that ad hoc committee that Mr. Killen had, was heading up, I wanna say, Mr. Bobo, was 120 units?
I didn't know anything about that.
Okay.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, it's not to exceed $100,000, so that tells me something there, but then, the EMS, not to exceed 200,000. But another thing, how many employees would we have that would receive that $1,000?
You want to address that?
Still looking at that, takes a little time to pull the personnel records, and me and Teresa have been covered up on that one. So we will have that information to you available before the August 24th meeting, but I do not have a number on it currently.
Yeah. I know the $500 for part-time employees wouldn't be that many, but I just wondered about the full-time employees.
We'll have a more concrete number before the full meeting, so you'll have the information available.
Charlie, you mentioned on the AEDs, Mr. Killen, I've been serving with him on that committee, and there was, the number of 100 or so is what. But from talking with him the other day, they met, I could not attend the meeting, with a representative from one of these dealers, and the price, I think, is a little higher than he originally thought. The $100,000 will not put in the AEDs and all the vehicles he was talking about.
I wouldn't have thought it would either, but it's, you know, it does say you're not to exceed 100,000, that's what we're going by.
You know, I don't know about the city of Rogersville. I know in Churchill, we have a few vehicles. I think Mount Carmel has in just about every one of theirs, from what information I can remember hearing us talk about during the meetings. But I'm not sure, you know, I would think, you know, as far as the cities, you know, maybe they could step up and help a little bit on them, and, you know, Mount Carmel, like I said, would not need it, because I understand they have in every one of theirs as far as the police. I don't know about the rest of the fire departments and stuff. But, the 100,000 will not cover all the AEDs that he's wanting to put in.
And if this program was to be successful, I believe the EMA department would need to head this up, because there's some training that has to be done to deal with liability. Jamie, do you want to address that at all?
We'd have to come up with a plan of how we address that. when that responder is dispatched to the scene of where the liability stands and the protocol for how that person's covered legally. Because they become a responder at that moment to a scene. And that's why you want to set that program up, is if you had someone cardiac arrest, you would want them dispatched to the scene, which at that point they would become a medical responder to that scene. Is my understanding at this point. Very valuable program to every citizen of the county. That's a vital asset if you're in cardiac arrest and a rhythm that your heartbeat can be regenerated through that defibrillation.
And the sheriff's department, the deputies are very active. You can't drive anywhere in this county hardly at all and not pass a patrol car.
These programs in other places have even been used for those responders that may have a medical event doing their job, that they've actually been used in-house a couple times.
David, since you're here, and, I know there's not anything against, concerning the radios, but the recommendation was made that those two radios be sent off and get fixed, put back in place until we come up with a better solution. Has that been done?
That's not been done. Did that pass a meeting?
Passed the committee, but I don't know if.
The Public Safety Committee, in the last meeting, recommended $420,000 for an analog replacement. Is that correct, John?
I believe that's right.
And that'll have to go, I assume, before full commission. You all know the procedure for how that goes from public safety to the commission. So, and Dawson will be the one to do that. But the last recommendation was a replacement of the analog system.
I don't remember seeing a resolution to that effect for this Monday's meeting.
No, there's not been a resolution.
There's not one. I looked in the packet too. So that'd be a question for Dawson on how he plans to move that forward.
But I understand it's totally yours and the mayor's call to do that anyway, right? Other than us furnishing the money to pay for it?
There's not anything that addresses the radio system in my budget, or in my job description. Jim would be the one to answer that on how we, basically who manages the replacement.
Well, I just asked that, and
I'm willing to.
like loose ends, if we've got problems, like those radios, really, we didn't know anything about it, about middle or January, there was a radio problem. But then it was through the pandemic with that, it went on the back burner, and then all of a sudden it became a hot issue again. And if it was that important, it looks like somebody's been doing something.
The timing on this project is not atypical. I've talked to another county in our district that's been dealing with a problem like this for six years. There's vendors that will do the services that we're doing for us. One of them called me and offered their services. It was between $45,000 and $100,000 to render the services that we've done for the radio system up to this point. It's and I brought this up either in committee or in front of full commission, that the task that was put in front of us there is not an easy job. It's not black and white. There's everything you change in a radio system has a repercussion on somewhere else.
But to answer your question, it's totally at the discretion of the county mayor. County commission is just the funding body. Mr. Evans, do you have any questions or concerns at this time?
No, I'm concerned about that 500,000. I don't think we had enough information at the time. I thought it was just a good thing to do. After listening to all the information that was gathered, I think they may have made a poor decision. So that's some people, I think some other people might have too. So have to think about it before we have a board meeting.
All right. Any further comments or concerns on that particular resolution? If not, moving on to Hawkins County Board of Education possible bond issues.
One comment on the previous, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Just think something you should keep in the back of your minds is you've got two resolutions, 05 and 04, that both attempt to potentially address some of the same issues. So I think you need to be mindful of that when you're considering those. That we probably don't need to pass both. Probably need to be conscious of that fact. Don't need to fix the same problem twice. We have Melissa here. I was just gonna do a very brief overview, but I'm just gonna say a few things on it, and if she wants to add anything to it, I'll be happy to let her do so. This isn't coming in front of you in August, so this is, don't overwhelm yourself with this, but just something that's coming down eventually. The school board has been meeting, discussing some renovations to their lighting system, switching convert to LED lights potentially, and upgrading some of their HVAC units and their ductwork. Some of this is potentially going to be funded through a ESI loan. For you that are not familiar with that, it is a energy savings school initiative. Did I say that right? Okay, that's what it stands for. And so typically those are self-supporting. There's sufficient savings to offset the payment for that loan. But then there is a portion of this project that will not be supported by the ESI and would require some other funding source, most notably probably a bond. So something to be thinking about coming down. I think the project has been roughly estimated around 13 million, and there's been projections for the ESI to cover potentially 5-ish of it. That's still pending. So there might be a $8 million funding gap there, which we would need to consider how we would achieve that if that was a project you wish to move forward with. There's mentioned at some points in different meetings that there were some other savings, but they were having a difficult time quantifying them. For instance, I believe there was some savings in the ductwork, but they couldn't put an actual number to what that savings would be. They're sure there's leakage, for lack of a better term. There'd be some money saved, but they really couldn't give us a concrete dollar amount. But it's my understanding that a lot of those ductwork, HVAC units are past their estimated useful life, and it's something that's going to have to be addressed one way or the other in the upcoming future. I don't, in the current state of our budget or in our education debt service, see a lot of available tax rate currently there to issue a bond through. So Mr. Gibson from Cumberland Securities is offered and is happy to come down and discuss funding options, what those would look like, what the interest rates are on a bond right now, what the time frame is we could set those out in. And in the near future, we'll probably see from him and have a good discussion about those options.
Do we have any idea about time frame that?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was next summer. A lot of this was attempted to be done during the off season for schools.
Correct. We're hoping to get everything going and to be able to stay on a time frame. We would really like to possibly have the resolution come through in September. But there again, depending on what we hear from the ESI application and, to know how much more bond funds that we're gonna need. We've kind of talked about possibly going ahead and having the resolution in September because the bond council actually does that resolution. Scott Gibson said that they would be the one that would prepare it. He could come to the September budget committee meeting if everybody was on board with it, then okay, let it go on to the full commission for September. If not, then pull it for the September commission and discuss other options. That way we can kind of keep trying on their timeline to start getting everything done. The lighting they would like to start working on immediately because that's where we're gonna have, see our savings immediately is with the lighting, so they would like to start that. Of course, with the HVAC units at Volunteer and Cherokee, those are things that they're hoping to do next summer as soon as school is out. But like Eric was saying, they did present this. I don't know if anybody was at our board meeting last night on the Zoom meeting, but they did present this to the board, and the board did recommend that we seek funding options. We're gonna hopefully have a special call meeting possibly towards the end of next week. There again, depending on what we hear from the ESI application. And hopefully Eric and, I can have a call with Scott again to kind of pin down the bond and the rate, the interest rates, and get his idea a little bit better too as to where we need to go from here.
Any additional questions concerning possible bond issue? I mean, primarily, that's just to kind of give everybody a heads up of what's pending, so that it's not just thrown in your lap as a surprise.
Like Eric was saying, the duck park at Cherokee and Volunteer, I think they said last night that we've probably got 40 years out of that, and you normally would get about 20 years, but basically I think what's happening is the duck park is, has a lot of holes in it, I guess, and so you're cooling a lot of attic space or space above the ceilings. So that's where they're saying we should even have more savings than what they've already quantified in their report, but that's something they can't actually measure right now, so.
Do you know if there'll be, or if there has been discussion about anything being added in to the system or to the ductwork for COVID related?
They did talk last night, let me find it in this PowerPoint, I'll tell you what he was calling it. Bipolar ionization. Actually, it was already part of this prior to, I guess, the COVID, but this, in a nutshell, this actually helps reduce viruses, bacteria, mold, allergens, dust, all of those type things. It reduces static electricity, but you know, as we're all learning how to deal with COVID, they were saying that this was one thing that would really help when we're able to get students back in the classrooms.
No further questions on that issue. We'll be real quick, an update on the portable devices.
Portable devices, you guys approved that before, we had a budget for that, so that is in last year's budgeted amount. Money has been, I don't know if it's encumbered or been a PO hold for it, but there's money set aside for it. It's my understanding those are either purchased or will be purchased very soon, so we should be seeing those. I don't know if they're back ordered like some other people are. I know electronics have been in high demand, and so sometimes you have a little trouble getting those in. I haven't heard what the expected lead time is on that, but it's well within the works. Anticipate you having them soon.
Did somebody actually order them, Eric?
I have to consult with Ms. Wallace, and on her part-time basis, I can't do that today.
Okay. Because the quote from Apple was for 22 devices.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy was talking about potential of 23. 21 commissioners, one for her and one for the county attorney.
Okay, I can check on that.
All right. That concludes all the items on the consent agenda.
I got one of them, John. There is 13 fire departments, but one of them didn't receive the $4,000 last year.
That,
For Churchill. And then, plus the firemen, association.
would you like to address that?
The Firemen's Association was never included in the original draft for the $4,000 additional money.
No, it wasn't.
And there is only 12.
12 received the $4,000.
8, 9, there's 12, and Churchill being one of them, and they did receive the $4,000.
John, I'd like to mention one more thing. This is dealing with resolution 2020-0803, and it's dealing with the pay for the ex officio member for this committee. When they combine the two committees, the personnel and Mark was the chairman, he would put on this has just been an oversight, I think, that he has been attending and with no compensation whatsoever for 2 years now. And the only reason this come to light, back when they gave the W-2s, the gentleman beside me started saying something about how much he made compared to what I made, because before I'm on this committee, Mark just sort of made a comment about it, and that set a flag off for me. If he's a member, he needs to be compensated for him coming to this, so that's the reason this one was put in.
Could do something for me, but I'm coming from that. I had to give up my retirement to come.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Gibson, second by Commissioner Jones. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eden.
John, I appreciate you having me.